And what we're doing now, and what you can see, is more and more of the body is being involved in the drawing motion. Okay. And now let's try for a sense of oneness. So think about the void. Now place, we don't have a bow, but we have an arrow. So place the thought of the arrow is in the void. Okay, so we'll go through this step by step. So feel your void, right? And that's going to open. And now place the arrow in the void. Now place the flight of the arrow in the void. Now bring the target into the void. Now make a void behind the center of the bullseye and connect that to your void, which already has the arrow and the flight of the arrow in it and the target in it. So it's going to go your void to the void behind the bullseye. And now allow the voids to connect as you draw the arrow with the flight of the arrow. Okay, for archery and the biodynamics of archery, we can make complete use of the abdominal breathing, the two different muscle groups, the two different finger groups. We can also make use of the void as well. And although it might be thought of as using the void for just an instinctive type of shooting, the void will also work for sighted shooting as well. So we can just use one particular muscle group, or we can start with the draw with a particular muscle group, switch to another muscle group halfway through, then maybe we might hold just with the void. So we can mix and match all the different factors, but we first want to look at the different factors so that we can add them to our repertoire of thinking. So we'll begin by pinching the knock of the arrow between our index finger and our thumb. And the index finger and middle finger connect via the upper or outer arm muscles to the neck and shoulder muscles. So as we squeeze that knock, if you squeeze the knock real tightly between the index and the thumb, between the index finger and the thumb, you can feel the upper or outer arm muscles tensioning. And you'll notice the lower arm muscles aren't tensioning and the chest isn't tensioning. And if you squeeze real tight, you can feel the neck and shoulder muscles starting to tighten up. And if you kept squeezing, you'll actually feel those muscles start to fatigue. So what we're going to do is draw the arrow back, pinching real tightly so we can feel that index, middle finger, upper arm muscle, neck, and shoulder group. So just draw back while you're pinching, and you could feel that group working. Now we can use an inhale, like an abdominal inhale or a regular inhale. And now let's use the same motion but emphasize an inhale as we pull the arrow back, still pinching tightly with the index and thumb. Now the exhale also has an energy of its own. So now we'll do the same thing, pinching tightly with the index finger and thumb, and do an exhale. So between the two, you might notice that the inhale has a sense of vitality to it, and the exhale will have a sense of grounding. There's a question like, all right, now we could start with the chest and shoulder muscles, both, right? And hold the arrow between the thumb and index finger, and now use chest and shoulder muscles. And you could feel this, the solid nature of using the two muscle groups together. And if you keep using the chest and shoulder muscle groups, you'll notice that you won't fatigue as fast as if you just used the shoulder and neck muscle groups. So now just use the shoulder and neck, not the chest. And you can see the difference in the mass of muscle that is being used now to move the arrow. Now let's go back and use the stomach and chest, which is one group. And let's just do that while pinching with the thumb and the middle finger. And it's difficult because we're not using neck and shoulder muscles. The awkwardness comes out because when you're pinching tight with muscles, but that's what makes the index and thumb work. So that combination, it just contradicts itself, and it just doesn't work. Okay, so now let's begin using chest, stomach, and neck and shoulder muscles now. Before we did the chest and shoulder and neck muscles, now we're going to add on the abdominal muscles to that, or abdominal expansion. Okay, now let's try and just do the chest and neck muscles and cut out the stomach muscles. Okay, and let's go back to stomach, chest, and neck muscles. And we're still pinching with the thumb and index finger. Okay, and now let's add on the void. So we'll start an in-breath with the void, and then that will go up the chest. I mean, that'll go, if we start with the void, then we go to the stomach, the chest, and then we add in on the neck. But we're going to trigger the motion with a void opening. Thumb and index finger. And what we're doing now, and what you can see, is more and more of the body is being involved in the drawing motion. Okay. And now let's try for a sense of oneness. So think about the void. Now place, we don't have a bow, but we have an arrow. So place the thought of the arrow is in the void. Okay, so we'll go through this step by step. So feel your void, right? And that's going to open. And now place the arrow in the void. Now place the flight of the arrow in the void. Now bring the target into the void. Now make a void behind the center of the bullseye and connect that to your void, which already has the arrow and the flight of the arrow in it and the target in it. So it's going to go your void to the void behind the bullseye. And now allow the voids to connect as you draw the arrow with the flight of the arrow. And you can even see a oneness with the visualization that develops within the body itself, or the biodynamics itself. And I have to emphasize is that this is a person that didn't do any of this at all before now. And this is to give credibility to the idea that when we work with the proper biodynamics, the changes happen instantly. This isn't something that's requiring like years and years of training. It's that if we do the proper biodynamics, and if they're natural, then the changes should happen immediately. You still need like net technical proficiency and stuff, but the concepts can be integrated into the body instantly and immediately. we find that it's human beings that bring everything together to create the performance, which is only natural, but it's important that we study the aspects of humans and biodynamics, because this is what's putting the target, the arrow, and the bow together, bringing it together. An interesting story is that a university's sports medicine department and sports performance department were studying some of the shooting sports in the process of training athletes for the Olympics. And they had the athletes shooting between heartbeats, because the pulse of the blood flow on a heartbeat could disrupt the aim slightly. Well, with their computers, they determined what was the maximum possible score that they could determine would be humanly possible. So they reached the maximum score through all their calculations and input, and then decided that they had best check to see how the maximum possible score determined by their studies compared to the maximum possible score that was already being done or achieved in competition. And then they would have an idea of how far they had to go to reach the maximum possible score through all their different types of training methods. Well, much to their amazement, surprise, and I suspect delight, was that the maximum possible score that the computers arrived at as humanly possible wouldn't have even placed in the most recent competitions. So it brings in the idea that there's something special about human biodynamics in performance that is not measurable or not particularly seen or evaluated, but it's still there, and it's this dimension that the gifted athletes are dwelling in to achieve their level of gifted performance. And this also then was going to have to be a necessary field of study if they were going to help other athletes reach gifted performance. So one of the things is being studied is also this idea of oneness or connection, which is something that might not be able to be completely, say, computer analyzed or even seen, but the results are. So when we look into the concept of oneness, it's, well, how do we create this sense of oneness? How do we train for it? Or is it something that we achieve through practice? How do we do it to create a sense of oneness? In other activities, other types of performance, it's interesting that oneness is actually what the whole thing is about. So if we look at the equestrian or horse type of competition with riders, they call it dressage. And the translation for dressage is oneness. So the top level or maybe the idea of dressage is all about oneness. So it gets us back to the thoughts of, well, what is oneness and how do we attain it? So we know that oneness is a sense of being where we are not separate or not apart, but it's not just being in union with something, it's where the entities are the same. So you could be in union with something, but you might not be the same. And this is where we want to look at for our concept of oneness is how do we become the same entity and the same like being when we have inanimate objects, or in the case of the dressage, they're working with horses, so it's animals that are alive just like we're alive. So how do we establish senses of oneness, and what are the vehicles that the oneness works, and how can we use the oneness then for our performance? Well, we know other people do it because that's what we see as the results. And it's interesting is that a lot of the gifted people who are dwelling in this sense of oneness, they can't describe it, they can't tell you what they're doing, and they'll say, this is just how I do it. I don't know if I'm one with it. This is just how I do it. So the study is sort of elusive, but as time goes on and as gifted performance is more evaluated, we're seeing that we can teach oneness. It's not just something that gifted people have that nobody else has. We can look into some of the biodynamics of the things gifted people do and then do those same biodynamics. We might not have the same innate technical skills, but at least we can emulate some of the aspects of gifted performance by doing some of the same biodynamics. So that's what we're going to do here, is look at some of the methods by which we can create oneness. So we're going to look at oneness with the arrow, oneness with the bow, oneness with the target, oneness with the environment. We touch the arrow relates to the hand grasp, the two muscle groups of the hand grasp. So the little finger groups connect to the lower arm muscles, which go to the chest, down to the stomach or abdomen area. And the abdomen area is considered like the center. They call it the hara or the dantian, and it's the center of what they call life or emotions or being. And you notice that if you're laughing hard, your stomach hurts. Or if you're so sad that you feel like throwing up, or there's a pain in your stomach. So since this being an area of life or being or energy, and the stomach and chest connect by the lower arm into the fingers, it turns out that we can take the energy of the stomach and run it through that pathway into the objects that we're holding. And you'll notice that in this video we also used a clip of a great-grandmom reaching for a baby. It's her great-grandchild. And she used the little finger lower arm muscles to grasp the baby, and when she drew the baby to her, she didn't breathe out or hold her breath, she breathes in. And she's using the energy of this in-breath to take the baby to her. So we know that naturally, when we're holding something precious, let's say it's a delicate vase of flowers, it's the same way we hold it this way. And we're connecting to it just like a baby. It's precious. But this is the path, is this abdomen through lower arms to little fingers that we naturally use to connect or establish a sense of oneness. Grandmom to little baby, receiver to a bouquet of flowers. So we're transferring our energy, but we're also connecting with this energy. And this connection then creates a sense of oneness with the object being held. So we're going to use this same path to create energy for that sense of oneness. So this is the motion. If we use the index and middle finger grip and exhaled, we would grab like this. We would go. And it's constrictive, it's choking, and we don't love somebody this way. Or if we're getting a nice precious gift, we don't grab, oh, thank you. We go this way, thank you. I love you. So you can see that there's a difference in what goes on in our upper arms to our neck and shoulder and stops, but starts and goes through the lower arm muscles, chest and stomach. So just like when the great-grandmom was making the baby hers and cuddling it, right? It's the same way as when we're picking up the arrow, right? We use the little fingers to grasp it and hold it and bring it to us this way. Or we could be holding it this way. But it's the same dynamics. Little fingers, lower arm muscles, and we're breathing in. And what we're doing now is the same energy as loving it, but we're establishing a sense of oneness with it. And you'll notice that if you're holding it by the ends, you're going to have a different feeling of completeness as when you hold it in the middle. So when we're establishing a sense of oneness, you could do it either way, but one way is I want to be at oneness with this tip of the arrow that's going into the target. So when I draw it, the bow, I can envision that point of the arrow going into the exact center of where I'm aiming. And I can feel or be at oneness with this arrow. You could hold it in the center and still do the same thing. It's, I can feel the point. Remember we had that dynamics of aliveness with this little finger grip? But when you're holding with the little finger grip, or lower arm muscles and little fingers, you have that alive feeling. You can tell or feel where the point is. You can feel where the feathers are. You can feel where the knock of the arrow is because of the alive feeling. If you're grabbing index and middle finger grip, it's choking, and you can see there's no connection in this to the point, to the feathers, to the knock. I don't have a sense of life or oneness this way, but I do have a sense of life and oneness this way. And this is how we make the arrow ours. And we hold it in front of our stomach, our center, just like the baby was drawn this way to the center. We don't have to draw the arrow all the time, but we connect the arrow to our center, either through the pathway physically or just directly. We're connecting it to the center or the essence of our being, so to speak. And this is how we make the arrow one with this. Naturally, we want to make the bow one with this also. And as we're picking up the bow, we're grabbing the same way, little finger grips. I could grab little finger this way. It's a little finger grip. And you could see how it's a connecting grip. Let me grab again, little finger grip. It connects. little finger grip. Also notice that it's my lower arm muscles. Little finger grip, there's no tension. The opposite is the index and middle finger grip. Could grab this way. And now you can see I'm clenching something. This is why we call it the dead grip, as opposed to the alive grip. It is rigid and it's still, but you don't see the connection. And obviously I'm not using the lower arm muscles. There's no connection to my stomach, my hara, or my essence. And then I switch this way, little finger grip, you see it soften and become almost alive. But I want a sense of oneness with me, and that's the life that we have established, or the energy we have, is this sense of oneness. And we need to use the pathways, or the biodynamic physical pathways, which can make us get there. Or I can also just do visualization and just connect Bo to me. Then as we're holding it, we want to feel all the aspects of the bow. This is why we need the live grip, just like with the arrow. We have the live grip. I can feel the string, all the little pulleys that are there. I can feel the tip of the bow. I can feel where the arrow rests. And this is how I'm making it mine, is I can feel it as mine. Or I can feel it as me. I'm making it one with me. And this is empowerment, is that I'm just not going to do anything the bow wants to do. I want the bow to be one with me, and the arrow to be one with me. And then I'm going to make the target one with us. And then when I release the arrow, it's going to be this culmination of a sense of oneness. Doesn't matter the aiming type of system you're using, or if it's instinctive shooting, it still can be oneness.